You're standing on a trail, quietly eating a granola bar in your hiking boots, and a squirrel does that thing where it runs 3 steps, stops, and then completely panics because it realizes you exist. It seems like a massive overreaction, but in 2016, researchers at the University of Western Ontario decided to test the boundaries of this fear response by playing audio recordings to wildlife in the forest. This chart shows flight response rates of mountain lions. When researchers played audio of lions roaring or wolves howling, the animals ran. But when they heard casual human conversation, they fled at more than twice the rate. Think about the biological paradox here. These are animals that kill deer for breakfast, sprinting away from soft, slow, mostly hairless apes who get winded climbing 2 flights of stairs. We are the super predator. Our ancestors hunted with such efficiency across the globe that extreme weariness of human beings was eventually baked directly into the DNA of the animal kingdom. This biological canic response predates the invention of guns, agriculture, and even fire. It goes back millions of years to our early human ancestors. Paleolithic humans were persistent hunters. We rarely had the physical speed to outrun a gazelle, so we simply kept jogging after it for hours in the brutal midday heat until the animal collapsed from sheer exhaustion. If you were an animal that looked at a weird bipedal silhouette in the distance and decided not to run, you were eaten. The ones that bolted immediately survived, reproduced, and passed that exact fear profile down the family tree. The modern deer vanishing into the brush is executing a survival program inherited from its most cautious ancestors. This diagram shows how predator recognition works in a typical ecosystem. Prey animals survive by memorizing rigid patterns. They know to avoid the open field during the day to hide from hawks, and they know to avoid the riverbank at dusk when the wolves hunt. We hunt at night, in the morning, alone, and in groups. By using tools like rifles and drones across every terrain and hour of the day, we bypass the biological constraints that limit every other predator. We also carry a potent alien mix of synthetic chemicals, deodorants, laundry detergents, exhaust fumes, layered over a highly distinctive natural body odor. When researchers placed scent strips soaked in human sweat near wildlife cameras, the drop in local animal activity was nearly identical to leaving strips soaked in mountain lion urine. We don't smell right. We don't move right. We don't operate on a schedule. To a wild animal, we are an entirely unsolvable variable across every sense. And the only rational response to an unsolvable threat is maximum, constant avoidance. We can actually test this theory by looking at environments where humans historically never existed, like the isolated volcanic shores of the Galapagos Islands. When Charles Darwin arrived there in the 1830s, he found a bizarre landscape where marine iguanas and giant tortoises completely ignored him. He could sit next to native birds, and they simply wouldn't fly away. Early sailors experienced the exact same phenomenon with the dodo, an animal so completely unafraid of human beings that hunters could walk directly up to them without resistance. Even today, in untouched parts of Antarctica, penguins will actively waddle up to field researchers and curiously inspect their camera equipment. Nature lacks a factory preset fear of humans. This avoidance only develops when we become a consistent threat in the local environment. This ingrained avoidance creates an invisible force that ecologists call a landscape of fear, and its reach physically reshapes environments far beyond individual animal encounters. This map plots data from a 2018 study tracking wildlife across 6 continents. It shows mammal activity plummeting during the day, while nighttime movement sharply spikes. All over the globe, populations are rewiring their waking schedules strictly to avoid crossing paths with us. Because our presence forces the animal kingdom into hiding, we often misread the silence of the woods. We hike out into a natural space and interpret the stillness as peacefulness, rather than a mass flight response. Our status as an apex predator essentially blinds us to our own ecological footprint, as the fear we instill keeps the wildlife we want to observe completely out of sight. But because this fear was learned over time, it can also be unlearned through a process called habituation. When animals are repeatedly exposed to human beings without experiencing any negative consequences, they slowly downgrade the threat level. In places like Rwanda, conservation programs have spent years carefully observing mountain gorillas. Family groups that used to flee at the first sight of humans now sit comfortably in the open, tolerating the proximity of researchers. It requires an immense, highly disciplined effort. You have to provide the animals with enough unbroken, positive data points to override hundreds of thousands of years of evolutionary instinct. The extreme adaptability and intelligence that made us the most terrifying presence on this planet is exactly what allows us to choose a different path. We built the landscape of fear, which means we also have the capacity to dismantle it.